Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I am happy to announce, some of you know, especially if you are in Sync Academy, that I have joined the club of Sync licensing fathers. I have become a father in the last couple of weeks, and so it's awesome. It's an incredible experience. It's one of the biggest adventures I've already been on in my life, and it's only been a couple of weeks old here. But it's really, really cool. It's awesome to be a father. It's awesome to just obviously lose a bit of my selfishness instantly, but gain so much more, like so many new aspects and so much more awareness. And yeah, it's a complete transformation of my life. And so I'm really grateful for it. And it's obviously already teaching me a lot of cool stuff. But this podcast is obviously dedicated to sync licensing. And I know many of you guys are listening are fathers yourselves. And I know some of you might be obviously mothers, but a vast majority of you are guys. And so a lot of you guys have kids. And you're in this interesting situation where you're trying to basically run a home business, right, out of your home studio, but you've got kids and they're probably all different ages, anything from where I'm at, a couple weeks old, to, a couple years, to maybe even in the teenage realm. And the question is, how do you navigate that? How do you actually get through to make sure that you are balanced, right? Because we don't want to be complete workaholics where we're neglecting our kids and we're not being present for them, but we don't want to be so distracted by our kids that we're not giving enough time for ourselves, giving a little bit of selfish time for ourselves to be able to produce and get stuff done. So I have with me again, Trevor and Mike, who we did those awesome weekly chats back during the sort of crazy lockdown phase of the coronavirus. So we're kind of doing a little reboot here. And I'm really here to kind of ask them what they do, how they navigate this sort of tricky terrain and how they find that balance for themselves. Because right now for me, it's pretty easy because, babies sleep a lot, especially in the first couple of months of life. So I have a lot of free time actually right now to be able to do whatever I need to do. But I know as time goes on, she's going to be awake more often. She's going to require more attention, more time from me. So I want to obviously learn from these two guys how you actually get it done. And I hope those of you that are listening and watching this, you guys get a little bit of advice too. And if you guys have any other advice for all of us, leave it as a comment below if you're watching here on YouTube, because we learn just as much from these conversations as you guys do. So please don't be stingy with your great advice. That helps. Make sure you let us know about that. We'd love to hear it. So Trevor, why don't we start with you, man? You obviously have two little girls and you got another one on the way, actually. So you've got your hands full. I first want to ask you about your sleep schedule, because you have a very unique sleep schedule. And actually, as my baby was born, I thought about you a lot, because I was like, we're going into this crazy thing where we're waking up every couple of hours in the middle of the night. And I know Trevor does this weird sleep thing where he doesn't sleep like a normal person. So I want to ask you how you found out about that, how you got into that, and how that's really worked for both your business and your family life. How does that work for you?
Yeah, so it's called polyphasic sleep, and I heard of it a long time ago. This producer named Ryan Leslie, he just briefly mentioned it in some interview or something, and it always kind of just stuck with me of like, that's kind of cool. And I've heard other people in the past have had these crazy sleep schedules. I think I don't want to say Socrates, but like somebody in that realm of like Plato, like they did that. Einstein, I guess, used to not sleep very much. A bunch of tech entrepreneurs and CEOs and stuff, So I've heard this kind of idea, and I was like, oh, is this some kind of myth thing that like they just say or whatever? But I looked into it, and so the polyphasic sleep is a cool thing where you kind of take naps throughout the day and then kind of a big chunk at night, and it's all about getting REM sleep at night, but only REM sleep at night, and then getting kind of like little brief refresher naps throughout the day. And if you schedule it, it makes it pretty easy. And you can only really do this if you're like at a stay at home business or work or whatever. Because if you got a job, they're not going to let you they might, I don't know, if you got a cool boss, maybe they'll let you dip out twice and take 25, 30-minute naps twice a day or something. But yeah, so that was kind of a big thing that I implemented when I started my business, as well as the idea of like, okay, I have a business, I have kids, and then maybe I'll do some stuff for myself here and there as well. And if I'm going to do all of that in the capacity that I want to, I'm going to try this sleep thing. And so what I did was, yeah, I implemented it, which is really hard to do. And there's even videos on YouTube, if you look up polyphasic sleep, of people who the first 2 weeks or so are rough. You get this kind of weird, you're like retraining your body. So you get groggy all the time, and you got to do alarms, and sometimes your naps don't work and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so after all of that, it basically was, okay, I've got this schedule now that allows me to be awake a long time. I think the total sleep hours was like 5 or something. It was like 3.5 at night to 4, and then 2 20 to 30-minute naps. So however the math ends up there. And so it allowed me to also stay awake in times when the kids are asleep. When everybody's asleep, I just kind of have time for myself, where I'm just like, okay, I'm going to work. Nobody's around. Nobody's bugging me, that kind of stuff. So that's a cool luxury I have, but not a lot of people can do that, right? Not a lot of people, some people got day jobs. A lot of people have like day jobs, side gigs, all that kind of stuff. And so that's where while the sleep thing is cool, kind of having a good relationship or like a good understanding with the people involved in your life, whether it's your spouse, your kids, all that kind of stuff, to like be like, okay, sometimes when you're awake, I'm going to have to do things and stuff. But yeah, that sleep thing was one, like if you can implement it and you really like stick to it, it'll help with your productivity because you have so much extra time. And I also realized that it kind of helped with energy and stuff too. As everybody knows, if you sleep a little too much, then you get groggy, right? So it's kind of the reverse of that once you kind of get into it.
Wow. So you're only sleeping like 4 hours a night pretty much, and then a couple of naps throughout the day. So I thought it was actually more sleep than that. So that's actually a lot less than I knew. So that's wow. Yeah. It's, to me, that sounds like it wouldn't work for me because I'm so used to like the 8 hours, every single night. And I even still I take very quick naps. Like as long as I can get to sleep, it's like maybe 5 minutes at the most. As long as I just kind of hit that sort of reset feeling and I wake up, I'm good to go. But that's fascinating, man. Yeah, and I definitely, I've already noticed that in terms of being able to, because I'm already an early riser, being able to be up before everybody's up in the house, and having still a couple of hours just to myself has been really valuable, even before pre having the baby. But it's still probably going to continue moving forward. It's just like you said, for you having that time maybe at night when you're not having to sleep the full 8 hours, but you get a good chunk of time to just focus and do what you need to do, building it into your schedule. So that's pretty smart, man. That's awesome. Mike, now I remember we talked with you and you kind of thought about your day in terms of like little modules, 2 or 3 hour little modules. And especially now with COVID, I think your daughter's at home, and so you're kind of helping her with her schooling and stuff. So how have you been able to navigate, all of that sort of needed time? You're getting pulled in all these directions from your business to your family. How do you do that?
Well, it's definitely not easy. It's, so number one, especially now with homeschooling being a large factor, the big thing I had to do was kind of figure out where I can cut and where I can sacrifice, because I can't put 17 hours in the studio, the way I would have before, or even like back when she was just getting born, when my daughter was just born. I actually had a night job. And I was also composing too. So before I started Reverse Play, and at that time, I was able to I had to dedicate my 8 hours, when, basically when she's asleep working, and then come back and work again for those couple hours that she's, napping and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as now, like so basically what I do now is, yeah, I schedule these modules. I kind of go in blocks of time. I used to do about like 5 hour blocks. Now I've kind of cut it down to 2 hour blocks because I have to shift around and do, a bunch of things. But really at the end of the day, it comes all the way back down to if I'm making music, or even when I'm doing like metadata or any kind of outreach or anything like that, it all just comes right back down to templates. And I just spent a lot of time actually this summer just revamping all of my workflow, templates, all that kind of stuff. So basically now like my modules are about 2 hours. And I set a goal of like, okay, well, at the end of this 2 hours, this has to get done. So if I'm making a track or something like that, I got to make a track or make a cue in 2 hours, like maybe, usually it's like 60 seconds or 90 seconds in 2 hours, print it, do lunch or whatever, or do another 2 hours of school, homeschool. So the cool thing about homeschooling with the way that we're doing it right now is it's a completely open schedule. So she doesn't have to, I don't have to sit there like on Zoom with her for like a set 6 hour period, a day or something like that. So we can kind of filter it in, wherever. So I'm able to like throw it in between these like sort of blocks. But yeah, instead of doing like the 4 blocks that I used to do, now it's more like, 3 2 hour blocks, so you can see like my time is significantly cut, down to about like maybe 6 hours working on music. So in that time I try to, do the best that I can to get faster. And like I said, set that timer so that when that 2 hours hits, it's like I'm done with whatever it is I need to do. And then, my mind can kind of take a break, which is great. So my mind gets to take a break, focus on something else, then come back and just kind of go hard again. And then, so
Awesome.
that's kind of how I've done it. The jury's still out whether it's successful or not. We'll see. But that's how I'm managing right now.
Yeah, man. And that's cool because, I mean, you recognize that you do have limited time. And so instead of, just, complaining about that, you're basically just taking proactive actions to just try to make that the more effective, right? If you only got 2 hours to produce a track, like you're going to those templates and you're sort of revamping everything to make sure, and that was really smart of you to do that during the summer to kind of sort of maybe even reinvent how you're doing things, because if you got even less time, you got to make that time really count. And I know everybody listening right now, everybody has limited time because most people do have the day job. They have other obligations they have to tend to. So if you've only got 4 hours a day, maybe 2 hours a day that you can even devote to sync licensing, well, you better be doing something more than just fiddling around with your keyboard and coming up with ideas and then just closing your DAW and not finishing anything. So that's really what we try to strive to teach you guys in Sync Academy, is how to make sure that you're taking the most, or getting the most bang for your buck, the most amount of productivity you can get, even out of those few short hours every single day. It's so important to do that. So that's cool that you're taking that on. Now, I want to talk about maybe kind of like a sort of an emotional topic here in terms of dealing with, do you guys ever feel like guilt in terms of, do you ever feel like you're being a little bit neglectful, that you're kind of working too much? And I'll start with my story on this. So as my baby was born, I obviously, as a first-time dad, I think my instinct was to go above and beyond, like overboard in terms of, I'm going to spend every waking hour with her and I'm not going to do anything selfish. It's just always going to be about her. And that lasted about a day. That was about as far as I went with that. And I remember that it was the second or third day I woke up, came to my computer, had a lot of emails, had a lot of stuff I had to do, just kind of like customer service stuff, And I remember, I was telling my girl at the time, I was like, I'll rush. Like, I'll just go through this stuff really quick and I'll come right back to bed and don't worry about it. And she's like, just take your time, do what you got to do. Like, do it right, do what you want to do, what you need to do to run your business. And as I'm in here and I'm kind of getting my work done, I do remember feeling this sense of like, oh, I got to rush this. I got to get it done. I got to get back there. Right. And then there was a kind of little bit of like, no, like I'm not doing anything wrong. Like I'm not being a bad dad by taking care of my business, by making things run smoothly to make sure that we have obviously income coming in and taking care of my responsibilities. So it took a little bit of an adjustment, but I'm still kind of learning that now, even with this chat right now. This is obviously taking time away from her. And so I'm like very mindful of that now. And so I'm kind of getting into this place of getting comfortable with making sure when I do have time with the baby that I'm being very present with her, and I'm 100% of my attention and focus. I'm not perfect, but trying to make sure that when I'm with her, that's my focus and my attention. And when I'm here or when I'm doing whatever, that's okay too. That it's sort of like a good kind of selfishness to be able to sort of have that balance to make sure that you can get your work done. So have you guys ever struggled with that in the beginning or maybe even now? And how do you guys deal with that? Trevor, maybe if you have some thoughts to share.
Yeah, man, this one's rough. Composers and then just people who are kind of entrepreneurial in general have a hard time with this because, you are beholden to you. And the only way to really do that really well is to kind of be obsessive. Because if you work like in a cubicle 9 to 5 type of thing, it's a little bit easier to not be obsessive about your work, right? Your time clocks out and you just forget about it. But in being successful in music and stuff, you kind of got to be obsessive, right? You got to be really like obsessed with what you're doing and, do the extra time and stay up late and all that stuff, right? It's the same with any kind of entrepreneurial type stuff. And so when a kid comes along or when a baby, 1, 2, now I'm at 3, I don't know how many we'll end up at, but when all these kids start coming along, you have to kind of pull yourself out of that mode because that obsession, there's a lot of wasted time in there. And not wasted, but there's a lot of time where you're spent, like what you just said, where you're just kind of fiddling with your doll, like goofing around, right? Like, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm going to play with this synth for 3 days. And that may not make sense because you now have other responsibilities that when you tie those two things together, they don't actually go together. So like an example would be if I send out a couple like sales emails and I spend, an hour doing some sales emails or whatever, that makes sense to me and the time that I spend doing it because it benefits the people that, like my wife and my kids and stuff. It benefits them and us as a whole. But if I'm like goofing around at some synth that I want to learn about, maybe that doesn't actually really benefit anybody in the long run. It just kind of tickles my interests a lot of the times. So I have to look at a lot of those things and weigh whether or not I should be doing those things anymore and think about that as I'm doing a bunch of different things. And one of the kind of key things that really changed a lot of this for me is there are things that you need to do, but maybe a trade-off should happen where you actually pay for them to happen by other people. So one of the things that I really focused on this year for my company, and you know, a lot of the people listening are probably composers and stuff, so you have to think of a different way of maybe applying this theory. But I mixed everything for 2 years for my company. I was the one who pulled up the stems, made the sessions, all that kind of stuff. It took a lot of time. And I realized that if I could cut back on that, then I would have more time to be able to do things, one, that were a little more profitable for the business, like getting sales and all that kind of stuff. And two, like I can spend a little bit more time with the kids and stuff and the family and like really cultivate that as well. And I would feel really guilty after mixing my 9th track in the day. And then the kids are like, are you just going to do this forever and never hang out with us? And it's like, oh no, like it has to be done for you guys, but also you need me, right? So there's this kind of thing. So I started figuring out, okay, if I'm making money here, I need to allocate some of it to pay to have an engineer around to work on some stuff so that they can mix stuff while I'm with the kids, you know, like that kind of stuff. And that's a business part, but like if you're a composer, there might be ways of doing that. Maybe you spend a lot of time doing one thing that you can maybe just not do or allocate to somebody else, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So that, like having that mindset, I think really helps with that, because then it's like, you also don't have to stress about it. Like tomorrow I have to do all that mixing that I'm not doing today. It's like, no, so-and-so is doing it right now and I'm hanging out with my kids. And that kind of really alleviates that a lot of the times too. And yeah, so there's kind of just this, have a good view of what's going on and try to, you know, rearrange your brain from obsession equals success to let's be smart about this.
That's awesome. Yeah, the thought that came to me for composers would be collaborations. So if you know, having time to start and complete an entire track is really difficult for those of you that are watching, collaborating with somebody would be one way to obviously cut your workload in half. So maybe you're doing hip hop rock with a great guitarist or something, but you put together the hip hop foundation of the track. Well, all you got to do is pretty much do half of the track. You put the hip hop foundation, some synths, some bass, whatever, throw it off to your producer and let him finish it. And then I don't know, whatever you guys want to do with the mixing or whatever. So collaborating with other producers can obviously cut down on your time. So you actually still can get your music out into the system, but you don't have to spend as much time doing it. And that's one way I've never thought about that. That's certainly a way you can do it. So I really like what you said there in terms of what's the barometer for what is selfish in terms of like I'm going to call it unrighteous selfishness, where it's literally just for me and it's not for anybody else. And it's not even like doing much for me. You know, as in terms of, and the other selfish is like the righteous selfishness, which is like, yes, I'm doing this, but it's going to do great for my family, and it's going to be good for me. It's going to be good for the business, and it's going to actually benefit everybody around me. So, you know, having that barometer in terms of like when you can feel comfortable spending a couple of hours on a project, that's a really good way to kind of know, is this really something I should be spending this kind of time on, or is this really just sort of an addiction or kind of like going down the rabbit hole or whatever. But then I think also at the other end of that, there's also this area of, and I've been trying to do this too, and maybe Mike, you can talk about this, like every day I try to carve out a little bit of something just for me, literally just for me. That's like, and it might be watching a dumb YouTube video that's ridiculous, has nothing to do with anything that's productive. It might be just going for a walk. It might be listening to some great music. It might be obviously playing the drums, just something that's like, I'm not really doing anything to, you know, make money or to progress or something like that, or be productive, but it's something to just kind of feed myself, you know, to kind of get myself amped up and juiced up and kind of like reset. And I think maybe because I'm, maybe you guys wouldn't guess, but I'm actually an introvert. I really do process things internally, and I need a lot of kind of alone time to sort of reset myself. So trying to just make sure I carve out a little bit of alone time, selfish time for myself every day is kind of important. So, but Mike, do you have some thoughts you can share on that sort of, you know, dealing with guilt, spending time away from your daughter, in terms of also being present with her when you are with her?
Yeah, so that's actually a difficult one that you know, I'm still kind of struggling with a little bit too. So especially now that she has a pretty good grasp on the English language, and she really lets me know, and you know, and all of the emotions that a kid would go through, from being cute to being sad to being angry, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, and trying to deal with that, I think, you know, that was really one of the main reasons why I really took a look at like the the modules, and try to tweak that a little bit and, limit the sort of time. So, but yeah, I think, like what Trevor said, I did find that, of course, like in the past when I'd sit there in front of my computer for like 14 hours a day, there was a lot of time that I spent just doing nothing, or just like, just doing things in circles, which is basically nothing, right? You're just moving a region one way and then moving it again back the same exact way, moving a fader up just to move it back down, so there's a lot of time spent just like not going anywhere. So I've taken a look at that and, and really at the end of the day, like as far as, the guilt doesn't really creep up too much, it's except obviously whenever she, comes to me and actually really expresses like, hey, especially nowadays, because it's tough with everyone being at home, can't really go anywhere. She's not, in school, she's not around other kids, so she really doesn't have any siblings, so she doesn't have anyone to kind of play with really. And so there are times where she'll really let me know. But, I take advantage of this situation too, in the sense of like, I'm letting, I'll let everybody else know that I'm working with or whatever. It's like, hey, I got to take today off, like, I'll give her that day, or whatever, half a day or whatever it is, and then of course, things that I need to do, I just really am concentrating on doing that. Setting my goals, setting my timers so that I, do those tasks as efficiently as possible. And if there's something that I need to do, let's say creatively for me or whatever, unfortunately, those are right now, at least, those are one of the things I got to kind of put aside. But to me, I just tell myself, it's like, well, we're in a unique situation right now that's not going to last forever, so this is kind of like, like I can do that, it's like I can get back to this. If there's an artist project I want to work on, I can get back to that, but the things I need to do that has to, keep the lights on and everything, I has to feed my daughter, feed my family, whatever, I got to do that, and then try to figure out like, carving out all those times. But it's definitely rough, and like I said, it's a lot harder whenever, my daughter starts calling me and it's like, hey, you know what, I'm really alone, I don't have anyone to play with, and it's like, okay, let me, but at least, so far it's been okay in the sense of like, I've been able to take days off, I've been able to take time off, and really address that, so.
Yeah, that's tough, man. So obviously right now we're in very special circumstances here.
Yeah.
I want to ask you guys, the final question I kind of want to land on is scheduling, because Mike, you said something that kind of, piqued my interest there in terms of sometimes, your daughter will just be having a rough day and you're like, all right, today I don't have to do work. I'm going to go spend some time with you, right? It's tricky with what we do here because it would be great if we could tell our kids like, hey, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from noon to 5, you got daddy time. Like, you're going to get me every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or whatever the time is, right? But we don't really always have that luxury because sometimes you get those last minute gigs and you got to do it. And I know, Mike, you've been doing a lot of, contract work with a lot of clients lately. And if they need something by tomorrow, like, you just don't have that luxury. So it's not like we have a regular schedule that we can set aside a time for our kids. But do you guys ever try to do that? Do you guys ever say like, on Sundays we're going to go to the park, or, there's certain days we're going to go do something kind of as a family, or even just with me? Or do you guys kind of play it by ear? Like as the week presents itself and you go, you know what, kind of slow today, let's have a family day. How do you guys handle this sort of scheduling, making sure you spend time with them? Trevor, why don't you start?
Yeah, I do the play it by ear thing, which I don't know is the best way. Mainly because I've noticed some of the, like, when you play it by ear and then you do like, they don't understand why some days are different than others when they're, and it starts to feel like they see some form of hypocrisy. They don't know that they don't know the word, right? But they know something weird isn't here, right? Like some days dad is just like too busy. And then some days he's just like, let's do all this stuff. And so I don't know how good of a thing that is, or if it's fine. I'm not really sure yet, but it's something that I've noticed recently as they're getting a little bit older, where they're just like, well, yesterday we, played that video game together for like 3 hours. And then today it doesn't seem like I'm going to see you at all. And it's like, that's part of that's part of the job in a way, like, cause a client will need something, but I didn't hear about it until today kind of thing. But then at the same time, like, I don't know what that's telling my kids. So I'm kind of still watching that and seeing what that means. But But as of right now, for the most part, that's the case. Just because that's kind of how I have things set up, where it's like some days I got a whole bunch I'm going to do, and then some days it's like, oh, everything's a little bit slow, so let's just hang out, or let me do a couple things and then we'll hang out and that kind of thing. That's been it for a long time, and it seems to be fine. But I have been noticing that little bit of like inconsistency is confusing to them, and I'm trying to figure out what that all is going to mean like long term.
Yeah, because that consistency is so important. I know for kids that they want to know the order. They need order in their universe, you know? And so I get what you're saying there, where they go like, well, why can't, I mean, today's just like yesterday. Why can't we do exactly what we did yesterday, you know? So I do understand they probably get a little bit of confusion, and just like, you know, why can't we do this? So, but it's tricky, obviously, because with this business, you know, we can't really just always go, yeah, sure, every day for 3 hours, I'm going to carve it out for you. That'd be awesome. You probably could maybe get to that point if you really like outsourced almost everything in your business, where you just had to do a couple hours of work per day and everything else is pretty much just kind of overseeing what other people were doing. But and you'll probably get to that point at some point in your business as you grow. But yeah, in the beginning phases, of course, like you really just do everything yourself, most of the stuff yourself. So that's really, really tricky. So Mike, how about you? Do you do any sort of pre-schedule, or do you kind of just play it as it comes up?
No, I play it by ear. Although, I mean, I've tried to schedule things, but I don't know, that fell apart really quickly, because it's kind of like, it's hard to, it was hard for me to keep a set schedule with my daughter, and then it's equally as hard, or if not impossible, to keep a set schedule with my client. So, you know, it's kind of like dealing with two types of kids in a lot of ways, you know? You know, everyone vying for attention and everything. But so no, so what I do is like I basically, yeah, I play it by ear. But one of the things that I really do is, you know, since you know, I take care of all of her meals, so I really make it a point to spend extra time, you know, during those times if I can, you know. So whether that just be an extra hour or whatever, you know, just to like eat with her, like make the food, eat with her, and whatever, and you know, hang out, play a game with her as well, that kind of thing. On the other side, you know, I'm fortunate enough nowadays to where I can, you know, basically tell clients, or tell, you know, a lot of my clients that like, hey, I'm just not available from this time to this time. And especially nowadays with, you know, with homeschooling and everything being a factor, you know, that's a lot more people are obviously more understanding, because everyone's kind of in that same, in the same boat. So, but yeah, so you know, of course, like there's times when you can't do that, you know, but then, like I said, I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where I am now, where it's like, okay, well, you know, if I got to say no, I got to say no, you know, and that's it. You know, so, and I haven't, you know, I'm the people, and fortunate in the sense of having been able to work the relationships that I have, so that like me saying no now doesn't mean that, you know, a job from them is not going to come like later, you know what I mean? So granted, I understand like when you're starting out, like, you know, you have to build to that, you know? So, but I definitely take full advantage of that. And I think, you know, I think just when it comes to like just carving out time, it's really just wherever I can spend like an extra hour or whatever, I'll just take it, you know? And sometimes it's like, you know, I think honestly, like, you know, we were talking about like, you know, Trevor talking about the polyphasic sleeping, you know, it's like, I think that just happens to me naturally nowadays. So I'm not like planning it. So it's like that extra hour sometimes might just be a nap, you know, that just ends up happening, you know, and it doesn't mean to be, you know, it's like I'm supposed to be playing with my kid, but like, you know, sometimes you get just so tired, whatever, you know, so you just take that 20 minutes in there. But yeah, so it's just basically, and the thing is, my mindset is it's the same as, you know, even when it was with making music and running my business, it's like whatever hour I can carve out for whatever I need to do, I just try to take it, you know, and I look at the whole day as like a 24-hour thing. Obviously, I have these scheduled times and stuff like that as best as I can, but yeah, if I can sneak in an hour here or there just for whatever, and that includes like, you know, hanging with my daughter and doing stuff like that, then I'll try to take it. So.
Oh man, what I love about that is you have this cool hack where you always cook her food, and I think that's a great way for you to just always have to make time for her, right? Because it's not even like you have to schedule that. You're gonna have to eat too, right? I'm sure you cook for yourself as well, and it's just this great way to go, like, no matter what I'm doing in the day, I'm gonna have to eat, and I might as well build in some daddy time, during our lunch hour or our dinner hour or breakfast or whatever. So I think that's such a cool hack right there to make sure that you're at least getting a couple of hours with your kid every single day and quality time. That's a really cool idea, actually, and it doesn't have to be a sort of like scheduled, like we're always going to do this. It's just automatic. We're all going to get hungry, and especially if you just made that commitment to always cook for her, man, that's a great way to make sure that you are getting that time with her. So, well, I definitely learned a lot, guys. I do appreciate you two being here, and I hope everybody that was listening obviously learned something. The one thing I do want to end this episode on is I just uploaded a video on my YouTube channel about it's okay to turn off your DAW once in a while, and especially now as the holidays are upon us. This is certainly a time where we do want to, I obviously, I don't want to come across as preachy, but I do think, being grateful for your family, for your friends, especially with COVID. I think the one thing that we got out of this for sure is how much we took each other for granted. Being able to just go to somebody's house and give them a hug, that's like a luxury right now, right? So, we took that for granted. Like we got used to that, and that's just normal. And so because it was so normal and we took it for granted, we sometimes would not give each other a lot of time or attention and kind of not call each other and not hang out with each other. And so now being much more mindful of that, to realize that like the work's always going to be there. Your DAW is not going anywhere. Your sync career is not going anywhere. You can take a couple of days off, especially during the holidays. Be with your family, be with your friends, reset, as much as you can. And what you'll also find is that you'll actually be more energized when you come back. So it's not even just about getting away and just being away from it all, but it actually will help your career, actually, because you need to have some balance to be able to be sure that you're not burning out. And remember, what are you doing all this for, right? So if you do have kids and you're watching this, you obviously are trying to provide for them. You're trying to provide for your family. So you're not doing yourself any good by throwing yourself, pedal against the metal and going 80 hours a week and never taking any breaks and never having any time for your kids, where you're like, well, I'm doing all this work because I want to provide for my kids. And meanwhile, your kids just want you, right? They don't really care about the sync licensing career. They don't really care about any of that stuff. They just want more of you in their life. So make sure that you're giving them adequate amount of that, as much as you possibly can, and don't lose sight of that. That's really what we're doing this for. Obviously, if you get to the point where you're doing sync licensing full time, most of you guys, the reason why you want to do that is because A, you get to be home, right? You get to be with your kids, you get to be with your family. You don't have to drive to a day job every single day. Of course, you get to make music full time. That's a great, awesome feeling to be able to achieve that. But really, at the end of the day, it's about creating passive income, and ultimately, way down the road, probably working less, right? Because you'll have passive income, passive royalties pouring in. And so you can take some more time off down the road if you'd like to. So, but don't wait, don't think that you're going to live your life in 10 years or, 5 years when that stuff starts to pour in. Start living your life now. That's my advice to you guys here for the holiday of the craziest year of my life for sure. 2020 is going to go down in history. And we were just talking before we started recording here, is 2020 just sort of a freak of nature, like it just happened and we're going to kind of go back to something a little more normal? Or is this the start of a trend that's going to be, 2021 is going to make this look like a cakewalk? We'll find out, guys. We still got obviously a month left here in 2020, so more stuff for sure is going to happen. Say it again?
I said stay tuned to next week.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to see, man. It's going to be a wild, wild ride. We'll see for sure. But, hang in there, guys. I know it's stressful, and I know obviously the holidays can be even more stressful. So be good to yourselves. Sleep, exercise, try to eat well, do some meditation, and obviously just spend some time with your family. So thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next episode.